And now for a series I call Sipping Soylent and Rambling and Ranting with Schriever. Um, okay, so I'm sitting in my recliner in my wife's living room. Our house has two living rooms, sort of, in that our garage was badly turned into a room before we moved in, and it's not sealed very well, unfortunately. That is my living room, and this is my wife's better organized living room. And I have so little space in the other one that I'm now here. My wife doesn't mind me being here as long as I don't have too much stuff up here. As with a lot of collectors and hoarders, it's easy to accumulate too much stuff. And I'm trying to deal with that. I feel like I have to mentally figure it out a little bit before I can really take it on seriously. I was writing something, typing some of my disorganized thoughts, trying to, what do you call it, duct tape them together into some kind of meaningful context. Anyway, so an issue that I have all the time is that no matter what I'm doing, I'm having lots of conflicting thoughts and ideas that are interrupting whatever I'm doing, and it's easy to get sidetracked by your sidetracks. There's a famous scene in, I think it's Malcolm in the Middle, where the Breaking Bad guy gets distracted, or not distracted, he is needing to repair a light bulb and ends up having like 3 or 4 other little family projects that keep him from being able to do his first project, and he's caught by his wife trying to fix the car, which is one of the things that's keeping him from going down the path. And I'm not I'm not explaining this very well. One of the things that you run into with people in real life and oneself is that there is the bottleneck of all your thoughts, and then there's your freaking mouth and your brain, and you're trying to corral them and spit them out in an order that is useful to other people or to yourself, and it doesn't always work. Anyway, I'm hoping that there will be people who won't mind dealing with that and unpacking that, and maybe even laughing at some of it. It's funny the way our brains work. My wife remembers titles of things in seemingly like synonyms and metaphors for the actual words in the title. So Breakfast Club could become something like brunch organization. You know, I mean, that's just an example. She wouldn't have mixed that one up. But anyway, so I'm going to, one thing I want to talk about is I am farsighted, which means that for reading things, I need reading glasses as I've gotten older. I didn't need reading glasses till I was 40. I'm now 51. And I don't suppose you care for any of this, but if nothing else, this will be a freaking diary for me, where I can look back and see my slow decline over the years. But if this interests anyone at all, I'm happy for it. Anyway, I have to use reading glasses, and but I don't need them for distance. And I'm constantly reading things all the time. So I want to have access to my reading glasses all the time. Ideally, I would have liked some glasses that just stayed here all the time that I could just flick up and down like this, the little view part on them, with just a blank thing underneath, you know. But those apparently are not a common thing that people look for. So I haven't been able to find something like that. I haven't researched as much as I could, but I asked a friend who's in the optical industry, and I wasn't real happy with the options that I was aware of at that time. Anyway, so I do this and this, like hundreds of times throughout the day, basically. Um, and then the other thing is I'm clumsy and I like to be very mobile, and my glasses are always falling off, especially if they're like this. So I have them attached with this freaking. This is actual lining from some pants or something. I know it's ridiculous, but it freaking works. This doesn't come off, unlike some of the glasses things that I've tried that have come off. But I know it looks silly, especially now that you know what the hell it is. It's some people would probably find it gross even. I really don't give a shit. It works for me. Anyway, but I find it sort of absurd that there isn't something that holds any, that works with any kind of freaking glasses, not just some specific stylish brand, but just works with any glasses. These are thin-rimmed ones, and that stays on, that doesn't fall off. So I wish I had something like that, and then something that would flip up and down like that. Anyway, that's one of the many rants I have. And if you're young and don't have to deal with this, or maybe you have some other solution, or it's just not an issue for you, I'm sorry I wasted a couple minutes of your life there. Anyway, that's assuming that anyone's watching this. Let's see. Watching the new Netflix series where this Asian woman who doesn't speak English is helping people who are borderline hoarders organize their lives. She doesn't seem that helpful to me, honestly. I've only watched 2 or 3 episodes, but she comes, she says a couple of things, and then she leaves, and then she comes back, says a couple more things, then leaves again, and then that's it. She doesn't really help that much, and she could have said those things by phone. And I'm always annoyed when she greets the house, because, I mean, some people may find that charming, but as a 21st century person, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I can appreciate a house as a home, but anyway. So, one of her things is, does this item bring you joy? And the problem with somebody like me who collects so many things, or is a hoarder or borderline hoarder, a hoarder can see the potential or promise in anything. You know, I mean, I don't save these bottles, but this bottle obviously is designed better than it needs to be in some respects, in that this will last for, 100 years after it was designed in some way or another. The plastic won't break down for quite some time, most likely. Maybe Soylent has an answer to that. But I could store other liquids in it, obviously. I could store screws or something in it and label them, and then I'd have all these little bottles with all the different kinds of screws or nails, or, I mean, there's so many things you could do with anything. An artist could, like, cut these in half and fill them with different colored sand and make a little, you could do anything with anything. So there's potential in everything. So this is the problem of a hoarder, is anything they see 1,000 possible potentials, or maybe they only see a couple of them, but they know that behind those couple there are potentially an infinite more amount of possibilities for every single item. So it makes it really hard to get rid of anything, because you feel like you're wasting it, especially if it's going in a trash can. At least if it's going into recycling, then potentially it's going to be reclaimed and reused in some way. But if something's going into the landfill, especially if there are any harmful materials in it, or plastics, or anything, it's like, this is just human detritus or detritus, I forget which is the correct pronunciation, but it's going to be with our future generations for a long, long time. Don't get me started on population. I don't want to deal with that right now. Anyway, so it's hard for me to get rid of things. So this winter break, I had off from work for the holidays, and I was going to work on thinning down my record collection some and going through all the papers and prints and books and try to reduce some of that. But I ended up winning a couple of auctions on eBay of electronics components, and I ended up messing around with those with the entire time and didn't do any of that stuff that I've been planning on doing for months. One of the things I've really gotten into is the Raspberry Pi, which is a tiny little mini computer board. These boards are called single board computers in that they are just one little board. although sometimes you can have other little things that attach to them that are also boards ultimately. But anyway, there are lots of different little hobbyist computer boards that range in price anywhere from like $5 to hundreds of dollars, and that obviously have lots of different options as far as how powerful they are and what connectivity they have. Anyway, it's really impressive, and you can do lots of neat projects with them. And again, because I'm obsessed with possibilities, to me it's just a blissful thing to dwell on, is all the different possible projects. Even though I think of these projects as being wonderful, most of the projects, even if I would do them, I'm not really necessarily that interested in them. Like, for example, I love the idea of game emulators and computer emulators, but I spend almost no time playing any kind of games of any kind, because I lose interest pretty quickly. And there are other things that I want to do that I feel are more compelling for some reason or another, or because of, some kind of intellectual work ethic, like I need to be reading the classics all the time, or learning some skill or something. Anyway, so I have a problem with prioritizing my time and prioritizing what to do. I've been asking myself what to do for all my freaking life, especially as an adult, and I still am unsure. I'm not a peeping Tom, more on that later, but it would be interesting to be able to look into people's windows and see how they spend their time and say, okay, and take notes. Like, yes, this is something I should do, or no, I already know this is a dead end. Obviously there's a lot of garbage TV that I have no interest in. There's a lot of really great TV. My wife and I, very arguably, watch way too much TV. And that's not something I would have thought I would be doing at this point in my life as much as I am. So that's something that I'm sort of concerned about. Anyway, so I didn't get as much done over the holiday as I wanted to. Our cat has kidney disease now. We have to give him subcutaneous fluids twice a week, which I was originally terrified of, and it's actually much easier than I worried it was going to be. One of my approaches recently to dealing with my stuff is I'm trying to imagine that I'm dead and I'm a ghost now who has to deal with my estate, and so it's no longer of use to me, but still I'm going to start with the less useful aspects of it first and move my way on to the less useful parts. So what should I throw away first? What should I recycle first? What should I donate first? And these are the streams of getting rid of things. There's trash, recycle, donate, or give away, and sell. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but so the first thing to do is look for things that are obviously of no use to anyone. Like I've done this with some of my clothes that are falling apart or something, that have holes or stains. It's like not even Goodwill would accept this stuff, so if they won't accept it, then that means it's trash. Same thing with things that aren't useful anymore and can't be donated any place, but if they're made of recyclable parts, they can potentially be recycled. Then there's stuff that can be donated. And when you donate stuff, I know from when I was in my 20s and did a little dumpster diving, or just seeing the kind of things that get donated to places, they don't keep everything even that they receive. They throw a bunch of stuff away in the dumpster. So just because you're donating something, us hoarders that are parting with something only because we believe that it's going to have some future life, if we donate it someplace and they just throw it away, it sort of defeats our purpose. So we should really look into the item and decide whether it really has some value to someone, or if it's just ultimately going to be thrown away. I need to be much more discerning, in other words, with everything I go through. Obviously, these are all first world problems. I'm not, there's my brain not doing anything useful again. Anyway, so I'm trying to have a a more detached eye view of my stuff and be able to potentially get rid of it more easily. I was thinking about how, like, when you get rid of a collection, especially, like, one of the truisms about getting rid of stuff is the faster you need to get rid of it, the less you'll get for it. So, for example, with a record collection, if you need to get rid of your record collection today, you can take it to a record store and they'll offer you, you know, if you're lucky, 20% of its actual value is probably a rule of thumb. They may claim more, but it probably doesn't really work out to that if you look at actual prices. Then after that, there's selling it online or getting a table at a record show and trying to get rid of it that way. The thing with a record show is unless you're giving stuff away, you only are likely to sell at most like 20% of what you've brought, unless you, again, are practically giving it away. So that means you would have to go to quite a few record shows. Or if you're selling stuff online, people are going to be buying things just one at a time. And it could take you forever. And you'd constantly have to be shipping out packages and paying fees. And, I mean, there's a reason why these people exist who, you know, just buy collections in bulk for pennies on the dollar. Because they have a system that they've developed of dealing with this stuff, or they're willing for that to be their full-time job. If you don't want to make this your full-time job, then you have to accept that you're going to get much less than they are, or than a record store is, or than an online retailer is. So again, the more time you have to get rid of something, the more likely you are to get more for it potentially. But again, there's a lot of work involved. So. And that leads me to another issue, just how money controls so much of our lives. Obviously, money is a for real thing. Our survival in a capitalist system depends on our ability to get money on a regular basis. You know, and some aspects of our system are arguably totally fucked up. There's no other word. I have a friend of a friend who died because her insurance wasn't willing to pay for her procedure. A preventative procedure due to her genetic predisposition to a certain form of cancer. She couldn't afford the $30,000+ to do the procedure on her own. Sure enough, she got the cancer and died from it. And the insurance company had to pay way more for her cancer treatment than they would have had to pay for the procedure. So there's a person who died in not under Obamacare, but under the previous system and what is still the system for most people. So you have to have insurance. Insurance doesn't cover everything. If it doesn't cover it, then you have to deal with it yourself somehow. You know, or there are situations where people are elderly. Maybe they've saved up a good retirement. They did everything right. And then one of them gets a debilitating disease or condition that requires 24-hour nursing care. That is incredibly expensive. They'd run out of their insurance right away, and suddenly they have to pay. I think a friend of mine had to pay $1,000 a day for care for one of his parents. Obviously, $30,000 a month, that doesn't last. $1 million doesn't last long that way. You know, that's crazy. You know, our system is freaking broken. Either that, or we need to decide that people are only worth X number of dollars, and after that they should be, you know, put down because our system can't afford to pay for it. Well, if they can't afford to, our system can't afford to pay for it, it's basically saying you deserve to die, you know, or live in subhuman conditions, you know, and that's just messed up. The idea that because we haven't been able to wrap our heads around healthcare or care for the elderly, our golden years are in reality the just saddest years of our lives for a lot of people, unless you're lucky enough to die from a heart attack or getting hit by a fucking car. You know, you may have some debilitating condition where you're wearing adult diapers the last 15 years of your life and needing nursing care, but you can't afford it, so you live in agony in some kind of Medicare home, or I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't, the future does not look bright for most people. And it's not something people like to think about or deal with, really, until it's too late. So there we are. Anyway, I'm sure you've enjoyed all this. This has made you very happy. And you just can't wait to subscribe to this channel and see more of this kind of content. You know, I had a turkey video, which you can see on my channel, where a neighbor a couple doors down had a wild female turkey pet, and I would pet it and make sounds with it, and that got mini viral. It's amazing the degrees of views on YouTube. There are people whose videos obviously have millions of views, or hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands. But even if you get a few thousand views, anyway, it's amazing. It's fascinating. It blows my mind that there are people who can make a living on YouTube. I was just watching videos of this guy called the 8-Bit Guy that are pretty neat, and he's not the kind of guy who would be a mainstream celebrity in that he's, you know, he's not Brad Pitt, and he is a bit of a nerd. Luckily, there is a place for nerds these days. I like to consider myself a nerd. I'm not on his level, skill-wise. Anyway, but it's nice to see that there's a place for something like that, and there are lots of niches in this existence. That's one of the good sides. Anyway, so I'm going to work on going through my stuff, and I'm sure I've forgotten some of the stuff that I meant to talk about in this video. But that's all I can imagine anybody would want to deal with at this time. Please comment. Please don't be mean. Subscribe if you want. Maybe I'll never do another video like this. Or maybe I'll do one every day. Or maybe I'll do 6 more today in manic flux.